Joining me now, NewsNation contributor and veteran political and media strategist Kurt Bardella, along with former chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party, Caton Dawson. Good morning to you both. Caton, I'll start with you. You seem to think that Kamala Harris should have stepped in here and asked for or fired the Secret Service director. Does that go beyond her ability as a vice president? Should not that have fallen on Biden's shoulders?
Well, for once it took an assassination attempt for both sides to get along and come to think that Democrats and Republicans both asked for her ouster. My comment on that was I think she missed the political opportunity. Whether it's right or wrong, it would have shown leadership. She's freshly minted, a candidate for the presidency, has to go through a convention. So my comment was it was an opportunity possibly missed. I understand why not. But again, it did take a assassination attempt with two people still in critical condition, an individual who was murdered, to bring the House and the committees together. It's not real refreshing, but it did happen. The resignation was a little late, but that's over. The Secret Service does its job. We'll see it do better. The taxpayers are getting ready to fund an awful lot of new agents and an awful lot of new things, and maybe that'll help it. But none of this is a happy occasion. It's all just sad.
It is. It's a tragedy. Kurt, let's bring you in here. Just as Democrats were coalescing around Vice President Harris, trying to gain some momentum on the campaign trail, you have this stain on the Secret Service, and we still haven't seen President Biden. There's a lot to chew on here. How problematic is it for the Democratic Party that all this is happening?
I don't think it's that problematic because it's bipartisan. It would be one thing if there were a partisan division, but as we saw at that hearing yesterday, both Republicans and Democrats on that dais were pretty united in their disgust and disdain with the Secret Service director. I have a hunch that the Secret Service director knew going into that hearing that she was going to end up resigning shortly thereafter. And sometimes you just send that person out there to take that first wave of attack from Congress and let them get it out of their system, take the bipartisan bashing, and then step aside so that the next person can come in and fix it. As someone who worked at the House Oversight Committee for the better part of 5 years during Republican rule in the majority, I can tell you we saw that act a lot. So I was not surprised when both parties kind of came together and said, okay, this is the person that they have sent up there to really take this public tarring. And I expected her to step down fairly immediately once that hearing had gone the way that it did.
Yeah, it was hard to see any path forward when you've got that much bipartisan distaste for the lack of information. This just in, fellas, from President Biden. He says tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, I will address the nation from the Oval Office on what lies ahead and how I will finish the job for the American people. Kurt, what does the president need to say in this moment to unite his party?
Well, I think that you'll see him, again, kind of reiterate his support for the vice president. But I expect this not to be an overtly political speech, given that he's giving it from the Oval Office. That is a backdrop that's not really appropriate for a campaign-style conversation. I think this is going to be kind of almost a little bit of a State of the Union for the next 6 months. What he's going to do, what he's going to focus on, what his agenda is as president. I expect a lot of the conversation to be foreign policy focused, specifically looking at the situation in the Middle East, how he wants to bring a resolution to that, and obviously the ongoing conflict in Ukraine with Vladimir Putin. So I expect the president to lean heavily into the foreign policy portfolio of his constitutional responsibilities.
Caton, former President Trump would have liked to have faced off against Biden in November. The Republican Party made no secret of their desire for that to happen. How does he pivot to Kamala Harris now as the presumptive nominee? And I think looking first maybe to the debate in September if it happens.
Well, I disagree with some of my friends on the right that this race is over. I will continue to tell you that after Labor Day, it's going to be Kamala Harris, the vice president's pick, Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance. And there's plenty of time for things to change. What I will tell you is the odds are against Kamala Harris. Only 15 vice presidents have ever gone on to be president. Some of those because people were assassinated or either they died in general. So it's a heavy lift. Certainly George H.W. Bush did it. Certainly Joe Biden did it. But Kamala Harris is really an unknown. I don't know if Kurt will agree with that, but people really do not know who she is. She's from California. Certainly the Democrats are going to win California. They're going to win New York and some of the big states. But Donald Trump is going to be able to identify Kamala Harris's tenure as a prosecutor, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to market her as a prosecutor. There's a lot of time here. There's going to be a lot of money spent, but I don't see the difference in the numbers, Kurt, in Biden's numbers versus Kamala's right now. The country has been split down the middle since Gore versus George Bush and hanging Chads in Florida. And we just can't seem to come together except to fire the Secret Service director. So the numbers are still there. There's 26% of the people out there that probably don't even know who she is, called independent voters that didn't vote in either primary, that are going to have to figure out whether she's going to be better or Donald Trump's going to be better. I will tell you that about 100% of the people know who Donald Trump is, and about half of them don't like it. So we will find out what happens to the Democrat side of how they have viewed this late exit by Joe Biden, a beloved politician in their party. Not much of a contest, because there isn't time to have a contest morning. There isn't. It's bumped up against it. I will close in saying none of this stuff happens by itself. There was an orchestrated effort to make this happen with President Biden, an orchestrated effort to make sure Kamala Harris is a nominee. It has worked. The DNC chairman is from South Carolina and an ally of James Clyburn, a very powerful congressman. So the place is set in place to have a love fest at the Democrat National Committee. She's going to get the nomination. And I do think it plays into Donald Trump's hands. Now, how he handles it, how he identifies her, I will tell you that people keep wanting Donald Trump to be kinder and nicer. That ain't going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
Not.
No.
I think we all know
Kurt, I want to give
hope for a Christmas present from Donald Trump. You're not going to get it.
That's right. You can hope in
right
one
there,
hand. You
friend,
finish that sentence.
That's the kryptonite for Republicans. I think that in an election in which we still got to remember one of the top issues here for Democrats are women's rights, a women's right to choose. Nothing is going to alienate that constituency and expand the gender gap more than Donald Trump going out there every day making snide, perceived to be sexist, biased, provocative and immature comments demeaning the first black female presidential nominee in the history of our country. That will not help their cause. And I think in this case, too, the fact that Harris isn't as well known is a plus. We just came off of an election cycle here between Biden and Trump, where every voter knew who they were. Every voter knew how they felt about them. And they don't like them. They wanted a change on both parties. The polling told us if they could have a different nominee, they would have preferred that. Voters were not exactly excited about the prospect of a Trump-Biden rematch. Well, now we have seen the response from Democratic Party voters in the last 48 hours. That's been overwhelmingly positive for Kamala Harris. She raised, $81 million in 24 hours, more than 800,000 donors, 60% of which were new donors to the Democratic Party and to Kamala Harris. There is real palpable excitement and energy for the Democratic Party. And those are two words we have not been using a lot over the last few months, excitement and energy. And so that changes completely the dynamics of the race.
All right, guys, make sure that you keep your hands and feet inside the car at all times and make sure the seatbelt is securely fastened, because I think we can't expect what tomorrow will bring. It's been a wild ride so far. Kurt and Caton, thank you, guys.